Yesterday, President Trump waded into Virginia's governor's race. Trump tweeted, quote, "Ed Gillespie will be a great governor of Virginia. His opponent doesn't even show up to meetings, work, and will be very weak on crime." Northam, the lieutenant governor of Virginia, fired back, tweeting, "I served 8 years in the Army, took care of sick kids, and am running to build a more inclusive Virginia. Don't talk to me about showing up." Trump and his tweets have loomed large over Gillespie, who is a former chairman of the Republican National Committee. He notably refused to answer questions from the Washington Post about Trump's endorsement of him on Twitter earlier this month, asking the Post if he could, quote, "go off the record." And Ralph Northam joins us now. Thanks very much for being on the show. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me this morning. It's good to be with you.
So let's talk about a couple things. First of all, Donald Trump says you don't show up to work. Respond to that.
Well, as I responded yesterday, I served for 8 years in the United States Army. I have taken care of sick children and their families for over 25 years. I served for 6 years in the Virginia Senate and then 4 years as lieutenant governor. And, I didn't miss a day in the last 4 years. So there's a contrast between my record and my opponent's record. My opponent, as you know, is a Washington lobbyist. The only time he showed up is when he gets paid. So I show up for my work. Virginians know that, and we're getting good things done in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
So Lieutenant Governor Ed Gillespie seems to be ending his campaign talking about how he is going to protect Confederate monuments. Donald Trump tweeted out that Ed Gillespie was going to protect, quote, "our heritage." First of all, what do you think the president's talking about? And secondly, what's your stance on the Confederate monuments that Ed Gillespie is promising to keep up?
Well, we had a horrific tragedy back in August in Charlottesville, a beautiful city, a wonderful University of Virginia, when white supremacists, KKK members marched into that city with their torches, shields, and semi-automatic weapons, spewing their hatred and bigotry. And, I was proud to stand up with our governor, Terry McAuliffe, and Mark Herring, our Attorney General, and call these individuals out for who they are. That is a bunch of white supremacists. Told them to go back where they came from and never come back to the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we regret that our president did not do the same thing. And I have asked Ed Gillespie, he's had over 70 days now to denounce the president for not standing up and making
right.
sure that we don't continue to promote hatred and bigotry. So there's a tremendous difference. His advertisements that continue to just promote hatred and bigotry, that's not the Virginia way.
So, Lieutenant Governor, let me ask you, again, we've already said today that we thought it was unfortunate that Ed Gillespie, I think a talented and gifted guy that I've known for a long time, is reducing this campaign, the final stretch, to Confederate monuments. So he's saying he's going to protect and defend Confederate monuments. I'm asking you, what's your position on these Confederate monuments, the defense of which Ed Gillespie is basing his campaign on now?
Well, Joe, if there's a monument in Charlottesville that gave these white supremacists an excuse to come into Charlottesville, then we as a society have to have that discussion. And my personal opinion is that these monuments, especially those that are divisive and that promote hatred and bigotry, need to be in museums with historical context. I have left that up to localities, and they will make that decision. But the important thing for Virginians is that our campaign is based on jobs. Virginians want a job that they can support themselves and their families with. They want to know that their children have access to a world-class education, and they want to make sure that they have access to affordable and quality health care. That's what I stand for in Virginia, and my campaign has been positive. That's why it's resonating with the Virginians, and that's why we plan to win on November the 7th.
It is interesting. Back in 2009, we were talking about Bob McDonnell's campaign and how unbelievably effective it was, because it was Bob's for jobs, Bob's for jobs. He went around the state. All he talked about was jobs. He didn't get distracted by social issues. He didn't get distracted by monuments. He was jobs, jobs, jobs. 2017, Ed's for Confederate monuments. It doesn't flow off the tongue as much, does it?
No, not exactly. I don't know if that resonates.
Isn't it for you, knowing Ed Gillespie like I've known, isn't it disappointing and surprising that he would end his campaign being the great defender of Confederate monuments instead of bringing jobs to Virginia?
Well, you know, I understand the tug and pull of what it means to be in the Republican Party in 2017 and how hard it is to navigate being the Reaganite policy guy that Ed Gillespie is with the social issues, aggressive immigration stuff that really animates the Trump base. And that's where the party is going. But Lieutenant Governor, I did want to ask you, I know the sanctuary city issue has come up in this campaign, and you have said, no, we're not a sanctuary city. I'm not going to be a sanctuary city governor. This is a federal issue. Immigration enforcement is a federal issue. Do you believe then you're comfortable with the Trump administration's approach to immigration, how DHS, how ICE has handled immigration? You're going to defer to the federal government?
Well, we don't have sanctuary cities in Virginia, and it was nothing more than a political ploy to say that we do. But I do want to comment on our economy that we were talking about just previously. We brought in over 215,000 new jobs to Virginia, over $18.5 billion of capital investment, and our unemployment rate in Virginia has gone from 5.4 to 3.7%. It's the lowest it's been in 9 years. So, and also the lowest, second lowest in this country. So we're very economy, the direction that we're headed in. And again, this is about the Virginia way. That's what this election represents, and that's what Virginians are paying attention to. They're not paying attention to the statues, as Mr. Gillespie wants to continue to be divisive, to spew hatred and bigotry. And as far as sanctuary cities, we don't have them in Virginia. And so I have always stood up and said that anybody that commits a crime in Virginia will be punished, and if appropriate, they will be put in jail. We've always been tough on crime in Virginia, and will continue to be.
Heidi.
But Lieutenant Governor, I don't know if that's right that people in Virginia aren't paying attention to the monuments, because presumably Ed Gillespie is no dummy, and he's talking about this. This is in his closing argument to Virginia voters. Presumably they've poll tested it, and I'm just curious whether you think there is a correlation between some of the tightening in the polls and the rise of this issue and the fact that Gillespie is using it.
Well, what Virginians care about, and certainly monuments has been a topic of discussion, but what Virginians really care about is jobs. They want a job that they can support themselves and their families with. They want to live in safe communities where there are not guns on every street corner, environments where the air and water are clean. These are the things that are important to Virginia. So as we move forward, we have a week left, or just a little bit over a week in this campaign. We'll continue to travel around Virginia, listen to Virginians, and make sure that we're taking care of their needs.
All right, thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam. We're showing the polls showing that the Lieutenant Governor's up by 7 points. There are other polls out there that are showing Ed Gillespie up a good bit. Ralph Northam, this is Center for Public Policy, has him up by 7. But the one last week, didn't that have Ed up by what? Ed Gillespie was up by 5 or 6 points.
Yeah, something like that.
So it's an interesting race. Now, listen, as you guys don't know, while we're working here,
really working hard.
We've got a control room.